Hello and welcome to the EDHRECast, where we're all about Commander, data, and dad jokes. I'm Joey Schultz and I'm joined by my puntastic co-hosts. Up first, he saw the commander named Farah 4 and he started wondering about Farah 5 and Farah 6. It's Matt Morgan.
So this morning, my wife caught me standing on the bathroom scale and I was sucking in my stomach and she said, "You know, that's not going to work, right?" And I said, "Yeah, it does. It's the only way I can see the numbers on the scale."
Goodness. Wow. What an opening line there, Matt. What an opening bell.
Did the joke pull its own weight there?
So up next, he got out a prodigal sorcerer, aka Tim, and the new card named Tam, Mindful First Year, and he called that the new Tim Tam Slam. It's Dana Roach.
We just got a bunch of previews for the Ninja Turtles cards, and it's bringing up some sad old memories for me. My uncle died in a turtle stampede, and it was a slow death.
Goodness gracious. Y'all are really on one with your jokes today.
We're on something.
Yeah, we just got to make sure we're keeping you on your toes, Joe. Can't get too comfortable in this business.
Absolutely.
Yes, indeed. All right, guys. Well, let's get to our topic here. This week, we're talking about the most fun new commanders. We've seen a bunch of legends in the past year that have been really, really powerful, but we didn't just want to talk about the most powerful, most broken stuff. We also wanted to talk about things that are just super engaging and interesting, and maybe even commanders that are a little bit underrated. Stuff that maybe people have overlooked a little bit, but once you actually start playing with them, the gameplay is kind of fantastic, and that we encourage folks to give another look to those commanders. Where do you think we ought to get started with the most fun new commanders?
I liked Zhao, Ruthless Admiral from the Avatar set last fall. Okay. It's 2 and hybrid Rakdos. It has Firebending 2, and whenever you sacrifice another permanent creature, creatures you control get +1/+0 till end of turn. And what I liked about this was it feels relatively open-ended, but it's open-ended in a way that lets you like pick a particular theme if you wanted to do it. If you wanted to, go Rakdos food, like you can use those food to sacrifice, use the Firebending mana to sacrifice those food to buff all your creatures up. Oh, or if you want to do that with clues or like whatever way you wanted to do it, there's a bunch of different paths you can take. So it's open-ended and lets you choose some kind of like a deck building, concept or something. But it enables that. It's not just like a prosper where it's like generically good almost any shell you put it in. This is going to be good in a specific shell, but you probably want to build around that specific shell. I like that idea. I like commanders that work that way. And it's not common, it's not heavily played. That is fun to me, finding like hidden gems. I find that kind of thing fun as well. So yeah, there was a lot about this that I found to be very interesting. And you have to unlock the power, I think, for this too, versus like it just being powerful by default, which I also find to be fun.
There's only 111 decks for this guy, yeah.
Yeah, and one thing I really like about this too is that it's forwarding a game plan. It's not just spinning wheels, it's not just accruing generic value, but I mean, creatures you control are going to deal more damage, which means the game's going to get over. It's not like you're just accruing value for the sake of value. That's one thing that I always appreciate, is finding interesting ways to encourage you to forward a game plan instead of value.
I appreciate especially there's tension with that. Oh, I've got this bank of a couple treasure tokens, for instance, that I could mid-combat crack and just have that 5 mana floating, but I've given all my creatures +5/+0. And there's a nice like question mark on each combat step that comes with this. And that's where I think the most fun would occur here too. Is like, oh, are these combats actually going to be a little bit dangerous? Or is Dana going to save that mana for a little bit later? And this won't be the combat step that it does all indeed blow up. That's a nice tension that it brings. So it isn't just like, oh, that's a cool ability. It's also the engagement that it causes and the combat question marks that it poses to your opponents during the game too. That's the kind of stuff that's going to make me want to keep playing against this as your opponent as well.
I mean, it's very similar to Maw of the Obsidat, which is a card, Joey, that I know you have played in a few decks. Where you can sacrifice a creature, give creatures you control +1/+1 till end of turn. This is just putting that in the command zone and putting it in a different color identity. It's a really fun card, and it's just ways to get rid of whatever you're trying to sacrifice, like Dana said, clues, food, whatever it is, and just forwarding a game plan.
Nice. Well, Dana, since you mentioned Zhao, I inevitably have to talk about an avatar card here, Princess Yue. And these cards are very related because Zhao is after that fish and it's horrible and it causes Princess Yue to become the moon. And these are references that y'all don't understand. And I'm just going to say, that's rough, buddy. Let's talk about Princess Yue. Princess Yue is also from the Commander Avatar set. That is a 3-mana mono blue legend, a human noble ally. And when she dies, if she was a non-land creature, you return this card to the battlefield tapped under your control, and she becomes a land named Moon, and she gains the ability to tap for colorless mana, but you can also tap to scry too. This doesn't seem like much at first, but the shell that has sort of adopted itself around the 590-ish decks that are here for Princess Yue so far is an all clones deck, because clones interact with Yue in a very, very silly way. If you get a clone into play and make it a copy of Yue, you have the legend rule. So one of those cards is going to have to go away. If you make the clone go away, it still has that trigger of, I want to come back to the field. This card wants to come back to the field. So it will. It will come back as a moon, but it will also still come back as a clone. It will be a land, but it will also still get the clone effect. And if folks are wondering how this works, it's because of layers, which I don't want to get into here. I'll throw a ruling on screen, maybe. It's a little bit wild, but the short version is that you will get multiple land copies of cards in play that are copies of things. They're just going to be lands instead. So you can get multiple copies of, I don't know, a Platinum Angel, a Consecrated Sphinx, a Royal Elemental. It's a kind of silly strategy that I look at it and I'm like, there's no way that this won't be absolutely so silly to play against. Come on, it's fantastic.
Seems pretty dang good.
And as a long time imprisoned in the moon enjoyer, I'm a big fan of turning stuff into moons.
Yes, there you go. I do think there's a quick note that you have to make on this too. A tension that I enjoy about this is that you can't run too willy-nilly. You have to be careful not to make too many moon copies of legends, because those cards will come back named moon and you can't have 2 legends, therefore named moon. That would also follow the legend rule. So you have to be pretty careful about what your clone targets are. But I also just think that this effect is pretty good with cards like Matoya or the Planetarium of Wan Shi Tong, which give you rewards for additional scrying as well, which this commander just wants to do in general. So there are payoffs for her little scry effect as well. It seems innocuous at first, but you're going to get an army of moon, not creature things, giving you a bunch of mana and a bunch of passive effects on the battlefield that I think will end up being very powerful and very engaging for folks.
Sounds like a deck fit for a Sam Rockwell. He would really love this.
It's a moon joke, Joey.
It's a moon joke.
What? Yes, I've seen Moon. I know what that movie is. Thank you, Dana.
Well, so you guys have talked about 2 commanders that are very, very much you commanders. Like, Dana, you like getting a little off the rails.
No, it was Princess Yue, not you. I just want to clarify that.
Oh, okay. UA both are being pedantic. But either way, so I want to talk about a commander that is a very me card. And this is the new one that we just got to see from Ninja Turtles coming out here. But Raph and Mikey Troublemakers, I want to talk about Gruul, big 7-mana smashing stuff. This card looks absolutely sweet. I love what this is doing. It reminds me a lot of kind of where my Vivictus Asmati, the Dire deck was going. It was Jund, just embracing the randomness, flipping things over until you hit some big nasties. And Raph and Mikey does this in spades. So if you haven't seen this yet, it's 7 mana, 5 Gruul hybrid for a 7/7 with trample and haste. And whenever Raph and Mikey attack, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card, put that card on the battlefield tapped and attacking, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this takes out all of the whiffs as well, which maybe I think people are going to maybe lean into a little bit too much because you take out the randomness because you're always going to hit something. But with that said, you're going to get to 7 mana and you're just going to overrun the battlefield. And I love doing these big smashy things. I do think it's going to be pretty popular. It's already looking like it's the number 4 most popular commander from the set so far. And granted, the set hasn't even come out yet, but people are already pretty excited about it.
I mean, yeah, free Worldspine Worms into play. Just cheat a Galta Stampede Tyrant right into play.
I'm waiting for you to say things that are bad, Joey.
No, I'm saying things that are good. Those are good things. The fact that it also has haste, so like right away you're going to get that. You just ramp right into this commander and it's going to give you immediate benefit. Feels like it's falling into that Atali Primal Conqueror realm, but without being perhaps quite as broken as Atali Primal Conqueror, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
And I enjoy the versatility here of you could pack it as in like this deck is very dense with creatures to hit that are really good, that you want to both play them from hand and get them off the top of the deck with this commander ability. But you could also build it a little bit more polymorph-ish, where you have a small number of targets that you're keen to hit off of the commander. And that gives nice deck tuning and tinkering versatility as well, which is also a way to keep things fun and engaging for you.
Yeah, and because it has haste, and this is actually more important to me than most people, I can run it in my mono red Agnes deck. Where it has haste, and because of the pips on it, I can play it in that mono red deck that is technically a Jund commander without having to violate any rules. So I enjoy that about it as well. But as a commander, I agree. Like that's neither here nor there. As a commander, that is a lot of fun. Being able to cast this thing and like just get free big stompy stuff off it. EDH players absolutely love and find to be the most fun thing they can be doing with their time.
It's very quintessential Stomp.
Yeah. How many big things can I do? This many.
Yep.
Yeah, you're kind of at no loss for big rule stompy stuff,
No.
but like this is a fantastic way to do that as well. And I can see it being very, very compelling and really feeding into that Temmie style of just like big things go burr.
And if you want to that like do, manipulation of some sort to like stack the top of your library so you can consistently hit that World Spine Worm or whatever it is, you can do that. But if you just want to let chaos reign, that's something you can also do here.
Just let chaos reign, folks. That's all you got to do.
All right. Well, before we go too much further into the episode with other fun and interesting commanders, let's take a quick break to do some shout-outs.
We are excited to be teamed up with Dragon Shield in 2026. We just got a preview of their dual matte sleeves with a silver color on the inside and a whole bunch of colors on the outside. Being able to match your deck sleeves with the vibes of your deck is super cool. And there's the Ravnica Guild sleeves and the Fetch Land sleeves and some really excellent card art sleeves like Dragon and Jackal Geneticist, and they're just getting started in 2026. So if you use the promo code EDHREC in all lowercase at dragonshield.com, you can get 5% off your next purchase. It helps the show and it helps your cards stay safe.
And if you'd like to support the show in other ways besides subscribing on YouTube, your local podcast app, and you can head over to patreon.com/EDHRECast. That's a way to get yourself a little in exchange for supporting us. So whether you want to see all of our challenge of stats picks that we've done over the years, a lot to catch up on over there. You can see all of that and more over at patreon.com/EDHRECast. This week, we want to give a very special shout out to Blake Dinius, who, this one stumped me. I'm very sorry, Blake. I know this is what you signed up for, is for me to butcher your name and make some sort of pun. But either way, we appreciate your support, and thank you so much for heading over to patreon.com/EDHRECast. And to all of our patrons, thank you so much for all the support.
Blake, your support means the world to Dinny us.
There we go.
There it is.
We got there.
And, real quick, one thing I want to shout out as well, if people want even more potential picks to look at for fun commanders, Ben Levin does an article series on EDHREC that is also about the most fun commanders. He's looking over the past years of commanders as well. So if you want another perspective, I highly recommend checking out some of the articles on EDHREC. They're a really fun time. I think now we'll get into even more of our personal picks here. One that I want to put forward, it's really negative of me. It's Mr. Negative, in fact, a card from the Spider-Man set. And I'm no great lover of the Spider-Man set, but this is a really fun commander to build around because it's playing around with life total swapping stuff, which I think is always a very engaging place to look at. There's nearly 4,000 decks to his name so far, a 7-mana Orzhov commander, a 5/5 human villain with vigilance and lifelink, and when it enters the battlefield, you may exchange life totals with an opponent. If you lose life this way, though, you'll draw that many cards. The world is really your oyster here. You can either reduce your own life total a whole lot and then swap it so that now you've taken someone else's 30 life and they're stuck with 4 or whatever, or you can lose a little bit of life to draw just a fistful of new cards. You get to use cards like Wall of Blood or whatever to just arbitrarily pay a whole bunch of life, and then you can use either Mr. Negative's effect or cards like Repay in Kind to set everyone else to the super low life total that you have now, or Access of Mortality as a backup way to swap people's life totals around. I just really love these types of cards, especially because they're at that mana threshold where it's hard to justify playing them, but altogether I think they make for really dynamic gameplay.
Well, in one kind of hidden thing here on the card is the fact that like when you swap life totals, assuming you are coming out on the positive side of that exchange, it doesn't say that you're gaining life on the card. Yeah. But that does trigger things that care about gaining life, because you are in fact gaining life, even though it isn't actually like doing it using those words. So that's an easy thing to miss here too, but like there's a lot of play you have in how you brew this with things that care about gaining life.
Yes, this will trigger your effects like a Veto the Desk Rose, because technically if you went from, 10 life to 20, that technically counts within the rules as having gained 10 life. So that'll trigger there. It'll trigger anything that cares about your opponents gaining or losing life too, like a Tainted Remedy turning life gain into life loss, or a Tainted Sigil or Wound Reflection to double up on what was lost that turn, stuff like that.
Well, there's also things that you can kind of turn around, like what otherwise might be a downside, you can actually shift into a really funny upside. Like there's cards like Tainted Remedy out there. So instead of letting people gain life, they lose that life instead. It's a fun card, and this is a perfect home.
Well, and another trick that I really enjoy with this one is to use flicker spells on Mr. Negative. Like if you played him and then swapped life totals to draw a bunch of cards, and then you flicker him immediately to gain your huge life total back, then you've basically just drawn a whole bunch of cards without losing the life permanently. And that's another fantastic area to go. But it's not just that. It's also the tension of like, hey, I need to make sure that I have a whole bunch of ramp in this deck to get Mr. Negative out in the first place. But then also making sure that you abide by the challenge of not actually dying while you're trying to set this up.
Right.
Because you'll have a bunch of cards in the deck that lower your own life total to make the swaps very meaningful. But opponents could have a rogue burn spell that they sneak in there that could mess you up, or a combat step that you maybe mistimed how safe you were. And I love that tension in a game as well. That's one of the things that has me the most intrigued by Mr. Negative.
Right.
A thing I really love about this deck is that it lets you use those like Angel's Grace effects to just barely stay alive. Like instead of dying, you'll go to 1 life. I also think it's so funny to have a Phyrexian Unlife enchantment in play, which will keep you alive even at 0 life. And then you use Mr. Negative to swap your life total with someone else. Like, come on, that's hysterical. If that happens in a game, even as the opponent who loses that way, you're having a grand time.
Well, I have 2 suggestions, Joey, that are kind of playing in a similar space a little bit, where you're like there's a mini game involved to a degree, and there's a tension. And I'm gonna say them both because like there's a similar play style from the 2 of them. And the first is the Speed Demon from back in Aether Drift. It's 3 and double black for a demon, 5/5 with flying and trample. It has start your engines. So if you don't have speed, you start with 1. And it says at the beginning of your end step, you draw X cards and lose X life, or X is your speed. And then next we have Savantini Romero times Exile from the new Ninja Turtle set as well. It's 3 and double black, so same casting cost. It's also a demon. It also has trample, but no flying. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, you put a +1 counter on it, and then you draw X cards and lose X life, where X is the number of counters on Savantini Romero. So similar vibe here. They're both going to increasingly draw you more cards and cost you more life. I love paying life to draw cards, but beyond that, I like the sub game here. Like your opponents have to decide, okay, he's drawing progressively more cards every turn, but it's also lowering his life total. And at some point, it's going to be too many cards and it's going to be a problem. But how long do they want to let that go? How long do you want to let that go? How, do you have to bake things into your deck to compensate for the life you're losing?
I'm sorry to be that guy, Dana, but you calling Savanti Romero Savantini is really, really funny.
there was somehow an extra N appeared in that name when I was reading it, and I don't know where it came from. It's a silent, invisible N.
There you go. Yeah, and the fact that it's going to get a bunch of +1 counters on it means it's not going to be teeny, like basically at all, which is the whole fun of it. Yeah, this is the kind of thing that like you give lifelink and it's going to make up for that life loss. But even me as an opponent, I'm looking at that ability like, oh, in combat on your turn, you'll get counters on this, and then you'll draw cards and lose life. I'm almost tempted, if I'm playing a deck that can manipulate +1 counters, I almost want to double your counters so that you'll keep losing even more life, Like, that's a fun way to see it across the field from you as well. So I'm very intrigued.
I really enjoy that, the way both of these cards kind of play, and like they're forcing you to build around that ability, make your deck factor it in. You have to make decisions about how much you want to lose. Your opponents have to make decisions. There's just a lot going on there that I really enjoy with both those cards.
Something I like too about Savanti is that being mono black, this is not a like stellar color for +1 counter manipulation. It's not like green that can just put heaps of counters on things all at once. Instead, this is a more tricky color about +1 counters, which also means it has to be carefully done how you yourself are getting counters on and removing counters from this creature. So like an Asterion's Thirst could really help you by exiling a creature and then loading a bunch of counters onto your commander. But then also you might need cards like Retribution of the Ancients to remove the counters from your commander in case you need to make sure that you don't lose too much life to that trigger. it encourages more deep diving. This is a limitation that forces you to get creative, and I think that's some of the most fun commanders to brew.
So Dana, I also have a commander that has a little mini game built into it. It's more in the deck building process that you play this versus in game. But I want to be surprised, but I'm not surprised that it's not more popular because it is a significant hurdle to jump through. But Jackal Genius Geneticist is one that just, it seems super interesting to me as a way for people to kind of build their own adventure with how they're playing it out. So Jackal is a Simic for a 1/1 trample, and whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value equal to Jackal's power, you copy that spell, except the copy isn't legendary. Then put a +1/+1 counter on Jackal. So this progressively gets bigger and bigger, and you get to copy bigger and bigger spells. But this just seems like a more fun and less just, oops, it's a broken deck than like Prime Speaker Vanifar, for example, where you have to build your deck in a certain way that you can accommodate what your commander's trying to do, but also you want to make sure you have access and just, it's building up. It's just, again, forwarding a game plan, kind of like what you talked about with Zhao, Ruthless Admiral. There's fun that goes into it, but it's also something you have to keep in mind throughout the entire deck building process. Like, you have to look at your graphs. If you're not a person that like digs into tools like Architect and make sure that like, okay, this hypergeometric calculator is going to look good, then this is probably not the commander for you.
No, I actually like that a lot, Matt, because right, you said you have to have this curve of appropriately costed creatures to consistently have one in play or have access to enough to consistently be able to copy them. And that's a fun sub game. And it's a game that kind of continues, whenever a new set comes out, you're like, okay, I like this creature, I want to put it in that deck. But do I have to remove something of an roughly equal power to like keep my numbers, in a way that works well for this deck? That's probably a little bit frustrating to do, but I also find it interesting. I enjoy a challenge like that.
The concern of like making sure that you exactly track where your +1 counters are going to be, so you can't go too wild with it. And you maybe even want to find ways to remove those counters so that you can continue doing stuff. Like, that's a fun tension. This also puts me a lot in mind of cards like Kian and Sabsunin, which have similar abilities of like having to track exact moments of when they get the most benefit. Sabsunin was that Simic god, reach, trample, indestructible, can't attack or block unless it has an even number of counters on it. But that at the beginning of first main phase, it gets +1 counters, and then if it has an odd number of counters on it, you draw cards. So it's either going to be attacking for you, or it's going to be drawing you cards on every other turn. And Kian Corrupted Memory from the Duskmourn set has a similar thing. As long as its power is even, you can cast non-creature spells as though they'd flash. As long as its power is odd, you may cast creature spells as though they had flash. And whenever you draw a card, it keeps getting counters on it. These Simic commanders that are giving you small challenges with those counters that you have to pay attention to those ebbs and flows rather than doing, I guess, what you could call traditional Simic things of just going all out and super crazy.
That's the problem, isn't it?
Right.
Right. These give you a little challenge, holding yourself back in very small, interesting ways that I think will be interesting for people to see, and also really interesting for you to explore in deck building and timing things out in the game too.
The question becomes, why would you want to work for it in Simic when you can just do it for free with literally most of these Simic commanders? But I do like the average deck too, Joe. You mentioned some counter manipulation. There's a lot of decks out there playing Owaka Traveling Merchant, Nesting Grounds to kind of get counters moved around if you need. But also something else that I think is really cool about this average deck is they're playing a lot of X spells. So you're always able to make sure like my curve is taken care of because I'm playing cards like Mockingbird, Ingenious Prodigy, all these X spells that are going to make sure like no matter what Jackal's power is at, I have a spell that's going to be able to hit that and copy it. So there's a lot of really cool stuff going on in these decks. I wish it was more popular, but I also, like I said, I understand why it's not.
Well, guys, do you reckon we should get to challenge the stats here before we talk about some other interesting commanders?
It is probably that time.
Yeah, I reckon.
We EDH reckon, even. Yeah, let's talk about some cards that we think are maybe over or underplayed before we get back to some of these fun, interesting, engaging commanders. Guess what? Our favorite deck builder, Architect, just released a really cool new feature, uploading custom cards. A lot of folks like to homebrew or invent cards for house rules or just test out their own game designs, and Architect now has a place where you can customize your own card, name, cost, types, text box, and put it right into your deck, where it will be treated just like any other card would. You can make a card that is totally blank or upload your very own custom image of your custom card. And yes, when you make your designs, not only will they count towards all of your deck's stats, such as is tracking things like your mana curve, your pips, your types, to make sure that all of the stats of your deck are accurate, to make sure you're getting the very best deck information, but also all the designs that you invent or upload are usable in the Architect playtester, which is of course the very best playtester in the biz. What's really exciting is that this new feature has also laid the groundwork for Architect to support uploading alters of cards too. So if you want to upload your own custom images of pre-existing cards, the fine folks at Architect have even more stuff cooking, so let them know if that's something that you'd like to see in the future. Check out our deck lists at architect.com/EDHRECast to keep up with all of our brews and try making your own custom cards while you're at it. That's archidekt.com/EDHRECast. For my challenge this week, this is a personal one. Hey, winter cynical opportunist players out there, please don't make the mistake that I almost did recently. So, Twilight Diviner is an amazing new card from Lorwyn Eclipsed that will copy one creature per turn that entered or was cast from a graveyard. This card is so good. That card was previewed and I immediately put so many of them into my wants list on Cardsphere because it's just so fantastic. I play so much Reanimator. I love this card so much. And once I got a few copies, I just started putting them in all of my decks because I play a lot of graveyard stuff. And it seems that 16% of Winter Cynical Opportunist players are also tinkering with their decks and doing the same thing, putting Twilight Diviner into those decks. But those are also just the newly updated lists that we see, which means there could be many more players who are also doing this but just haven't updated their lists online yet. But here's your PSA, Winter players, be careful, there is a non-bow present here. Winter Cynical Opportunist says at the end of your turn, you exile cards from your graveyard with 4 or more card types, and then you get to cheat one of them into play with a finality counter on it, and that might feel like a creature entering from the graveyard, but it's actually a creature entering from exile. So Twilight Diviner will not trigger to make a copy of the thing. Twilight Diviner's an amazing card. You should definitely play it in places. Just pay careful attention to where it is that your stuff is entering from, because some forms of revival and resurrection are tricky, so watch out for edge cases like this. In this case, I would say it's overplayed in that deck, but certainly play it in a bunch of other places. That's going to be my challenge.
Well, my challenge this week is for the card Unexpected Fangs from back in Ikoria. And I was recently looking for some life gain in a deck. I needed to be able to put it on a commander for a deck I'd built. And there's a handful of enchantments in black that do it. But then you create this scenario where people can not only remove your commander, they can remove the enchantment, even if they don't have creature removal. What's nice about Unexpected Fangs is it's an instant, and it puts a +1 counter and a lifelink counter on a creature, which is much more difficult to interact with. Basically, it's forcing the person to actually remove the creature instead of removing the enchantment. And again, if you're playing, like in my case, Rakdos and black colors, I do have ways to redirect removal spells off creatures, not so much off the aura that might possibly be on my commander in this case. If you are looking for whatever reason to be able to give life gain or life link to one of your commanders, doing it in the form of counters versus in the form of an aura is much safer. And additionally, if you're playing like I am in Rakdos, there's a lot more ways to both recur an instant spell from your graveyard than there are to recur an aura. And there's ways to copy that as well, incidentally, in those colors. So if that's something you're looking to do in that particular color pair, Unexpected Fangs is a really, really good card that does the thing better than an aura is going to be doing it.
I mean, you mentioned Savantini earlier, Savanti Romero. Yeah. This would be a perfect card for that deck. It's giving you an extra counter and giving lifelink to the commander. So if you draw more cards and make up the life loss for it, that would be a perfect home for that right there. Pretty underrated card, but it's a really nice effect.
Yep.
Well, I'll wrap us up this week with our listener submitted challenge of the week. So we got an email from Colin McMasters, which you all can do, by the way. Send us an email at edhrecast@gmail.com. That's, you don't have to be a certain tier patron. Just send us an email and we'll consider those as well. But Colin McMasters sent us an email and it was short and sweet, but I actually love this challenge here. So Colin said, I'd like to submit the card Meekstone as underplayed in Duskana the Rage Mother decks. It's only in 128 decks out of over 6,600 on EDHREC. It's in this deck. It is a one-sided stacks piece with immediately broken parity, and I really like this. So Meekstone, it's not played in a whole bunch of decks. I mean, it's 40,000 or so, not super common, but for 1 mana, you get an artifact that says creatures with power 3 or greater don't untap during their opponent's untap steps. And Duskana the Rage Mother is all about having creatures that are base power and toughness 2/2. So Duskana comes in, you draw a bunch of cards for each of your 2/2s, but whenever a creature you control with base power and toughness 2/2 attacks, it gets +3/+3 until end of turn. So in Duskana, you basically get effectively 5/5s whenever you're attacking, but they untap because they're small during your untap step. And this is super, super important because any opponents out there, they're going to have bigger creatures. If they attack and you're able to survive that, you can drop this and just make sure like they don't untap for the rest of the game maybe. So there's a lot of play here. I think this is really, really good. I know people don't love stacks pieces out there, but one thing that you can kind of get around with that is if you're playing it and it, like Colin said, where it unilaterally affects everybody, but you're able to get out of it somehow. These are the perfect types of stacks pieces where you can use it just to get all the blockers out of the way to make sure that they're not going to be coming back after you and then knock people out of the game. So I really, really like this. This is showing up in a very, very small percentage of decks. I know if everybody out there, if you play a Door in the Siege Tower deck, you've probably played Meekstone. That's where you see this type of card showing up a lot in. But if you're playing 2/2s that just happen to get bigger, then absolutely you want to give the Meekstone a shot. So good call on this, Colin, and thank you for the email.
And Challenge of Stats has been brought to you by Cardsphere, the best way to turn cards from old decks into cards for new decks. And I can't stress how quickly I've been getting cards lately too. I'm actually in the process of building an entire deck using just Cardsphere, and it's nearly already done after like 10 days. And I've been documenting the whole process, so I'll put it online here once everything is finished. But yeah, it's like you at this point can build a deck using just Cardsphere. You should give it a try. Just go to cardsphere.com/EDHRECast to get started today.
Sweet deal. All right, guys, let's get back to our topic. You're talking about some fun commanders. Dana, do you have another one here that you think people ought to give another look?
I do. Sita Varma, Masked Racer from back in Aether Drift. 2 Aether Drift cards for me. Just shockingly, considering none of us really love that set at all.
Most fun new commanders, we said. New commanders. Right, yeah. Anyway.
It's Simic colors, and it's actually Simic to cast, 1 green and 1 blue for a human rogue. It's a 2/3, and it has an exhaust ability for double green and a blue and X. And you can put X +1 counters on Sita Varma, and then you may have the base power and toughness of each other creature you control become equal to Sita Varma's power till end of turn. So this is the kind of thing you can run with, a Flying Men style build where you've got a bunch of evasive 1/1s that are cheap to cast, and you're going to swarm them out. And then you spend 3 in X and put X counters onto a creature. It already has, the commander is already 2 power base anyway. So if you pump, 3 into it, all of your creatures have base power and toughness 5/5, but that's going to progressively get larger every turn as well. I mean, it's a commander with a win condition. Your commander is just going to kill people.
When the time is right, here's the commander that will turn them all into 7 power and they're all still unblockable. Kind of threatening to do a little bit of that Jetmir action right there from the command zone.
Yeah.
That looming sword of Damocles. You're kind of telling everyone, here's the plan, but then that also opens you up to have like surprise other win conditions that are in the 99 as well, that they don't see come, maybe like some type of instant speed pump instead. Like that's a fun tension. You keep on bringing these commanders that could pump things up as a surprise. Zhao and then this. It feels like you have a type there, Dana.
The other thing I like about it too is people, when they build a rogue typal deck, it's almost always done in Temur colors. You could very conceivably do that here, but doing it in Simic. And I think that's fun too, being able to build a Simic rogue deck.
Yeah.
Actually run stuff like Shardos Agent in your rogue deck. I think that would be interesting too. You get to go build a typal deck in colors that aren't traditionally being built like that.
Yeah, I really like that. I'll move to a pair of commanders here that both have a similar type of vibe. I just love taking a downside and making it an upside. I loved it with Mr. Negative, and I'm going to mention some more black commanders here. I play a lot of black, everyone. I'm sorry. Zhu Effete, Osteoharmonist from Edge of Eternities, and the new Abigail, Eloquent First Year, have very similar vibes to me, where they're taking creatures that could have really bad abilities and just erasing the text from those creatures completely. Zhu Effete, Osteoharmonist, folks may remember it from the Game Nights episode of Edge of Eternities where Jimmy played it. It is a 3-mana black human wizard that can tap to return a creature from your graveyard to the battlefield, but it becomes a skeleton in addition to its other types, and it has no abilities, and you activate that as a sorcery. And then Abigail, Eloquent First Year, is a 2-mana Orzhov commander, a 1/1 bird bard with flying, first strike, and lifelink, and when she enters the battlefield, up to 1 other target creature loses all abilities, and then you give it a flying counter, a first strike counter, and a lifelink counter on that creature. So you're erasing whatever it was and turning it into another flying, first strike, lifelinker. I just think these are such interesting deck building challenges to take those things that could be downsides and make them into huge upsides, such as by taking a Death Shadow from your graveyard and putting it into play with Zhao of Feet, and now it's just a 13/13 with no other text that you can manipulate that way, or using Abigail with a couple of blink abilities to turn just really big creatures into an army of flyers, or negating your opponent's creature's abilities with her effect as well.
I looked at Abigail and I really wanted to say more about it, but I really wanted to be more intrigued. And I think that's the good word for Abigail with me, is this card intrigues me because I want to like Abigail more than I do. And I have one. That was my pre-release foil that I got when I went to the Lorwyn Eclipse pre-release. So I have one sitting around waiting for me to just like feel the pull to do something with it.
Zhao of Feet especially, I think, is kind of fascinating. Just the possibilities of, running a bunch of creatures with something like Vanishing that you can just turn off by playing them from your graveyard, not have to worry about them going away or something, or Echo Cost or things of that nature. I think there's a lot of room here to play creatures that don't see play anywhere else because those, older keywords have such a large downside to them, and being able to play those creatures from your graveyard and just ignore those abilities, I think is really interesting.
Yeah, like here's my Rotting Regisaur,
right,
a 3-mana 7/6 that would make me discard cards every turn. Instead, no, Zhao of Feet has turned it into like I just got a 7-power creature that maybe I'll sacrifice to draw cards or something like that.
Yep.
Or Abigail will just turn that into a 7 flying lifelink first strike. Okay, something. Or Phyrexian Soulgorger, a 3-mana 8/8. Just like, yeah, those are the types of things that I think are. It's a fun challenge to see, can I pull this off? But then also you can either blink various creatures if you need to reset their effects, or use those Malakir Rebirth type of cards that if they would die, they'll come back with their abilities in case that's something you want to explore as well. And of course, in the case of Abigail, you can just nuke your opponent's creatures too and turn them into very similar creatures that all have those flying keywords, but that also really messes up your opponent's day because they had expected to be able to use Mikey and Raph to cheat big creatures into play. And instead you're like, no abilities for you, sir. So that could be pretty helpful as well. I just think these are very intriguing, and it's a nice way to see whether you can take a negative and turn it into a positive, which is one of my favorite things to do in Magic.
Yeah, they encourage you to dig deep, which I really like.
Yeah. And Zhao of Feet I thought would be more popular, especially because it was featured on game nights. But it's only got about 3,000 decks to its name right now. It's rank 700. And Abigail is pretty new, but she's only got 1,700 decks to her name or so. Pretty low in terms of like the Lorwyn offerings there. So yeah, I would definitely say give these a look. I think that they're a lot more interesting in terms of the gameplay that they provoke than you might initially expect.
Well, so my commander that I want to throw out here I love modal commanders that you can take in several different directions and do a few different strategies with. Eshki's Temur's Roar is one that I really, really like. I've never built, but every time I see it, I see somebody doing something slightly different with it, and it seems really fun. And I just love that you can do it so many different ways. So Eshki Temur's Roar was the pre-con commander from Tarkir Dragonstorm, and it was the Temur colored, obviously, but it has the ability, so whenever you cast a creature spell, you put a +1/+1 counter on Eshki. Then if that spell's power was 4 or greater, you draw a card. Then if that spell's power is 6 or greater, you can deal damage equal to Eshki's power to each opponent. So if you want to build just small, I'm going to flood the battlefield with mana dorks and play a bunch of 1/1s and just make a big Eshki, kind of like what people do with Animar, you can do that. Or if you want to play some bigger stuff and play kind of mid-range, you can do that and draw a bunch of cards with your power 4 or greater. But if you want to go even further over the top and play stuff like Where Ancients Tread and all these big, powerful, rewarding you for the bigger the card, the bigger reward, you can also do that with Eshki. And I love the modality behind that. And some people are combining that all into one deck, but you really can take this 3 very different ways. I think the freedom of being able to do that and have it be just viably supported is super, super fun, having it put into one specific commander. Again,
it's a commander that has your path to victory printed on the card. It advances the game, right? You're not dirtling. Even if it's not my style, I appreciate a commander that's going to constantly be pushing things forward. And this is going to be pushing things forward every single game.
Especially because you can also opt into just put a bunch of +1 counters onto Eshki and then just find a creature that will trigger it for that extra damage trigger. Right, I think that's kind of fun. And Matt, I'm going to yes Andy here. I think Eshki Dragonclaw is also very interesting in Temur.
Yeah, Eshki's great. Both of them.
The other version of Eshki Dragonclaw that wants you to have both cast a creature spell and a non-creature spell this turn is another fun puzzle. I don't play a lot of Temur, so it takes a lot for me to be intrigued by a Temur commander, but Eshki's up to some cool stuff no matter which printing it is that you choose.
Well, and one thing that just like a new trend with Eshki Temur's Roar that is super, super funny to me is evoking the new elemental incarnations from Lorwyn Eclipsed.
Love that.
That's so funny because you get the cast triggers, you still get the ETB abilities, but also you counts, as big as they are. Like Wistfulness is a 6/5, so you're going to get all those abilities for 2 mana. I love this trend. It's so fun to just like see how specific mechanics play with new commanders or older commanders in this set, because you can find some really, really cool stuff. I mean, Dana, I know you love to appreciate that.
I absolutely do. Yeah, I said I love cards that force you to dig deep and finding things like this that is going to make you just look for oddball stuff that doesn't otherwise see play. I think is really interesting.
For sure. I'll go to my last pick here, and this is a little, maybe more parts underrated than anything. I feel like the new Sanar innovative first year from the Lorwyn set is really being slept on. It's like, of the 21 Lorwyn commanders, it's spot number 19. It's really underappreciated in my opinion. It is a 4 mana, 2/4 Goblin Sorcerer in Izzet colors. It has the ability, at the beginning of your first main phase, you'll reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal X non-land cards, where X is the number of colors among permanents you control. And for each of those colors, you may exile the card of that color from among those revealed cards, then you shuffle all the other stuff away, and then you may cast the exiled cards this turn. If I'm reading this right, since this is the 2 colors, this just gives you 2 free impulse draws every single turn. Is like kind of basically what it's doing, and it's doing it in a pretty understated way. I feel like Sanar actually could really surprise you with how much extra card advantage it will provide during the course of a game. I think it's probably just being slept on. That feels like a really nice card advantage engine to me. Am I crazy?
No, definitely. Yeah, it's one of those cards that like I look at and I'm like, there's only this many decks where people have decided to brew this commander.
Yeah, 243 right now. Like that's very small. It's very small, and it fits in so well with those like Passionate Archaeologist and those Nalfashni, those play from exile reward type of effects. And like one other thing that I enjoy about this too is that it kind of inspires a deck building challenge to play non-colorless cards too, so that you can play more cards of those colors from your deck. So for instance, curating your mana rocks to not all just be colorless mana rocks, but to play more colored mana rocks. It also disincentivizes you from playing like a whole bunch of counterspells, for instance. So I think your opponents will appreciate that. That helps it, I just think, kind of stand out from other well-known Izzet strategies. And I, again, just think that it is very understated. It's not going to draw a whole lot of attention to you on the battlefield, but it's still going to give you a whole lot of extra card advantage that will really add up. So I think you're just going to always be taking game actions with this deck. You're always going to have something to do when you play Sanar.
I concur.
My last fun commander here is Zuko Avatar Hunter. And Zuko's 199 decks, so not really being played at all. It's a 5 mana mono red commander. Human Noble with reach for a 4/5, and it says whenever you cast a red spell, create a 2/2 red soldier creature token. That is really simple, but there's a lot of different ways you can build that. And it also lets you do things like surprise people. Like, you know, you fill your deck with instant speed spells that make an additional token spell, and suddenly like your deck is one nobody wants to attack into because they don't know what's going to be on the field suddenly. You can, you know, do things like Crown of Flames, like old enchantments that have the ability to bounce those back to your hand. So you can, you know, cast Crown of Flames for a single red, spend a render, turn it to its owner's hand, and cast it again, and like do that multiple times to proc as many of those 2/2 soldiers as you have mana to proc. There's just a lot of weird play things you can do with it that you aren't traditionally seeing at a table in a mono red deck. I think that's really interesting, and I'm surprised it's only, you know, been brewed 199 times.
Yeah, this is just such an iconic effect too. Like you have cards like this that we've seen for years now, like cards like Young Pyromancer. Whenever you cast an instant sorcery, you make a token. But this counts every single red one, which is super important. It's not instants and sorceries. It's not a specific card type. It's just a spell in your deck. If this is at the head of your deck, every single spell is going to make you a 2/2. And I think that's super important because, I mean, Red has played rituals before. You can play a Mana Geyser and crank out, you know, 5 or 6 spells in a turn. Like, Joey, you and I got to play in a game that a Mana Geyser was super, super impactful when it made a ton of mana when we played with the Elder Dragon Hijinks folks over there. So, I mean, you can just imagine, like, if you're able to crank out all these cantrips and there's a ton of red spells, like, do something minor, then draw a card. Like, you can kind of treat this like your own, like, build your own Empty the Warrens almost.
Every Reckless Impulse comes with a 2/2, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Very nice to cast Faithless Looting and get a free 2/2 up body off that.
Yep.
And I'll admit, Dana, when you first said this version of Zuko, I was like, I don't know, man. I was a little skeptical, but I started looking through its EDHREC page, and this page is so funny to me. We're all familiar with Perforos decks, creatures enter, you deal 2 damage to everybody. Mm-hmm. And we've seen that at the head of a deck. It's very deadly, draws a lot of attention, really sets a certain pace for the game. But this is like you took a Perforos deck and like turned it inside out in a way, because there are a lot of those Impact Tremors and Agate Instigator and Weftstalker Ardent and Molten Gatekeeper and Witty Roastmaster, and holy whoa, there are so many cards now that say when your creatures enter the battlefield, deal damage to everybody. And instead of putting the damage in the command zone, you've put the token making in the command zone, and now you get to play all of those other huge damage effects in the 99. And I think that is kind of a refreshing take to see.
And then it lets you do things like, okay, now I'm going to run a bunch of the effects that, like, when a source deals 1 damage to a person, it deals 1 additional damage or something, and like suddenly all of those creatures ETBing hit way, way harder. That stuff all scales up. There's just a lot of different like routes you can take with this depending on how you want to build it. I think it's a fun commander, particularly for one that like sees very, very little play.
This is 100% the type of commander I'd discount and then be very surprised by how much damage you actually managed to do to me, for sure.
Yeah.
But also, this is the type of commander you can play Battle Him in, and players are playing Battle Him at a very significant clip. And I'm here for that type of nonsense. Like, I like this a lot. This is a really, really cool pick, Dana.
Yeah, getting that mana for every creature you control. That's a fun effect that feels hard to pull off sometimes, but this is the type of deck to do it. And that seems like a very Matthew Morgan type of route.
It is. It is indeed. I'm glad that we all got to talk about commanders that resonate with us personally as deck builders. And I appreciate that about these episodes.
I was noting just like, and I'm putting a bunch of stuff here, and it's just like, well, there's another commander that has black in it, and there's another commander that has black in it, and I'm like, oh man, I really have a type. And then I saw your picks of like Temur stuff, and I'm like, thank goodness.
A lot of green, a lot of red. That's it. Everybody has a type, Joey.
Yeah, well, I tried to put an Is It one in there too. I'm trying to explore other stuff, I promise. Yeah, no, these are fun. These are interesting ones to look at. And again, I recommend folks check out that article on EDHREC from Ben Levin if they want to see other commanders that people are submitting as like super fun from the past year. Things that you just should not overlook. There are a whole bunch of very powerful commanders out there for sure, but take the time to look at some of these other legends as well, because they might surprise you. I think each one of us heard some stuff that surprised us from other people's picks here in this episode too. So we hope that you give these another look and have some good games with them. Fellas, with that, I think we're going to call this episode to a close, though. We've got to hear from all our listeners out there about what they think are the most fun commanders that have come out recently, maybe within the past year. Let us know in the comments, hit us up. And if folks want to get in touch with us, where is it that they can find us on the onlines? Matt?
So you can find me on pretty much any social media platform, whether that's Instagram, Blue Sky, whatever you want. It's all going to be the same. At Mathimus55, that's MATHIMUS55. And don't forget, we're super proud to work with Dragon Shield to protect all of our decks. So make sure you trust them to protect your decks, including those brand new 2-tone matte dual sleeves. They just came out with all the new colors on. So check those out while you're there. And use code EDHREC. That lets them know that we sent you and gets you a discount at the same time.
And Dana, how about you?
You can find me online at Dana Roach. I'm writing articles for EDHREC, and I'm doing some social media stuff for Archidect, where you can see some short form video from me and my cat weekly. And you can find all of us together at patreon.com/EDHRECast.
And you can find me everywhere online, from Instagram to Blue Sky at Joseph M. Schultz. And you can, of course, find the cast online at EDHRECast. We'll be back at you next week, everyone, with more data and insights. But until next time, remember, EDHREC your deck before you wreck your deck.